Dark, cold metal walls stood tall inside the alien spaceship. The air felt heavy and dead. Machines beeped in the distance. Red lights blinked slowly, like a warning that never ended. Deep inside the ship, a small cage stood quietly, no movement. No sound from within, only breathing, slow and weak inside the cage. There was a girl, maybe 10 or 12 years old, thin and dirty, her skin pale like the moon. Her body shaking slightly. She had no clothes, only old rags around her waist. Her hair was long, tangled, and covered her face. Her eyes were open, but empty, like she was looking at nothing. Her knees hugged to her chest, arms wrapped around herself, like she wanted to disappear. She had no name, no voice, no memories, just fear and silence. The cage was her world, 4 metal bars and 1 dirty floor. She didn't know how long she had been there. Time meant nothing here. Sometimes machines came. Long metal arms with needles and wires. Sometimes they gave her water, sometimes pain. But never words. No one talked to her. No one looked at her like she was alive today, felt the same. Cold and dark. But then something changed. A new sound came, different from machines. It was soft, careful, like a person walking slowly, metal boots on metal floor, step by step getting closer to her cage. The girl did not move, only watched. From the corner of her eye, a man appeared tall, in a black uniform, human eyes, human face. Not like the others, not like the monsters who kept her in the cage. He looked around, confused, his hand on a small flashlight. He pointed the light toward her cage, and then he stopped. He saw her, a child in a cage. And his face changed, not fear, not hate, but shock and sadness. His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to speak but words got lost. "What is this?" he whispered, voice low and full of emotion. "Who puts a child in a cage like this?" The girl blinked slowly. She saw the human, really saw him. His eyes were soft, not cold like the others. He stepped closer, knelt in front of the cage, and looked at her like she was real. "Can you hear me?" he asked, gentle voice, like talking to a small animal. "Are you hurt? Are you okay?" She did not answer. She had forgotten how to speak, but her eyes locked with his. And a tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't know why. Maybe it was his voice, maybe his eyes, maybe it was hope. The human looked angry now. Not at her, but at whoever did this. He checked the cage lock, old and broken. He pulled something from his belt, a small device, and placed it near the lock. A soft beep, then click. The door opened a little. The girl pulled back, afraid. She had never seen the door open before. Was this a trick? Was this another test? "I'm not going to hurt you," the man said, both hands in the air, showing peace. "I'm here to help you. My name is Jack. I'm human, like you." The word human felt strange to her, like something she once knew but forgot. She looked at him again. His eyes were warm like fire. And for the first time, she felt something strange in her chest. A small soft feeling, maybe not fear. Maybe something else. Jack reached into his bag and pulled out a blanket. He slowly placed it at the edge of the cage, not inside, just close. Enough for her to reach. Then he opened a small pack. Inside was food, something soft and sweet. He placed that near the blanket too. "I don't know what they did to you," he said, his voice almost breaking. "But I promise I will not leave you here." The girl slowly crawled forward, eyes on him, on the food, on the blanket. She reached out, hand shaking, and touched the edge of the cloth. It was warm, soft, not cold like the cage. Her fingers held it like it was treasure. Then she looked at the human again. He smiled. Not a big smile, just enough, and nodded once. In that moment, the lights above them flashed red. Loud alarms started. Screaming across the ship, a deep robotic voice echoed through the hall. "Unauthorized breach. Subject containment compromised. Alert security units immediately." Jack stood quickly, pulled a small weapon from his side. Eyes alert, he looked down at the girl, who now held the blanket close to her chest. Shaking again, "I need to get you out," he said fast. "Can you walk? Come with me, please?" She looked up, then slowly. moved, weak legs trying to stand. She fell once, but Jack caught her. He picked her up gently, like she weighed nothing. Like she was something precious. He turned toward the hall, alarms still screaming, footsteps coming closer. Danger rising. He held her close and ran. The girl closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she felt safe in someone's arms, heavy. Boots echoed through the cold hallway, red lights flashing above, alarms screaming louder with each second. Jack ran fast, his arms around the weak girl, her small body shaking against his chest. The air around them buzzing with fear and urgency. Behind them, doors opened, machines activated, shadows moved, metal guards prepared to stop them. But Jack did not look back. His only focus was forward. Forward to freedom. Forward to safety. Forward to anything beyond this cursed ship. The girl clung to him, her face buried in his chest. She had no words. Only silent thoughts spinning like storms. Who was he? Why did he care? Why was she in his arms and not in the cage? Was this real or just another dream made of pain and wires? Jack turned a corner. Lights flickered above. A metal drone flew by. Scanning the area, he ducked under a broken pipe, the steam burning his arm, but he didn't care. He held her tighter, her small hand gripping his uniform like it was her last hope. Almost there. He whispered, his voice drowned by the alarms, but she heard him somehow, like a soft breath in the chaos. They reached a blast door, thick and closed, locked with alien symbols glowing blue. Jack tapped his wrist device. A small screen appeared, full of strange language and error codes. He cursed under his breath, looked at the girl, then back at the door. Time was breaking. He placed her gently on the floor, her eyes open slightly, watching him move. His hands danced across the screen. Buttons pressed, codes entered, but nothing worked. The door remained sealed. Behind them, more footsteps came closer, louder, heavier. The girl stared at the door, her eyes flickering like a broken star. Something inside her stirred, like a spark. Rising from deep darkness, her hand slowly lifted, her fingers stretched toward the lock. The symbols on the door began to glow brighter, changing color from blue to white. Jack turned and froze, watching her in awe. Her hand touched the center of the panel. No fear on her face now, only strange calm, like she had done this before. Like she was remembering something lost in her blood. The door hissed, then unlocked, sliding open slowly. Bright light spilled from the other side. A long corridor with a window showing the stars outside, endless and beautiful. Freedom waiting in the distance. Jack grabbed her again, amazed but silent. He had no idea what she just did, but he knew it saved them. He ran again, down the corridor, heart racing, mind spinning, holding this girl who had no name but held power. In her hands behind them, metal guards shouted in unknown language. Plasma guns charged, one fired, blue light flew past Jack's shoulder, hitting the wall beside him. He dodged left, turned quickly, and fired back, one shot, clean and sharp. The guard fell. The girl opened her eyes again, watching the stars outside, her breath slow, her mind floating somewhere between pain and peace. She didn't know what was happening, but for the first time, her body felt lighter, like chains were falling off, like her soul could breathe. Jack reached a small dock area. A ship waited there, old but still alive. He rushed inside, locked the door behind them. Alarms still screamed outside, but here it was quieter, safer, almost still. He placed her on a seat gently, then moved to the control panel, fingers fast and focused. He powered up the engines. Lights blinked green. The ship shook slightly as it prepared to launch. His eyes flicked back at the girl, who sat quietly, watching him now. Really watching. "Do you remember anything?" he asked, not expecting an answer, but hoping for one, any word, any sign that she was still there inside. She looked down, touched her chest lightly, then whispered, voice dry like wind through ash, "Why did you help me?" Jack looked at her, surprised, then smiled. A soft, tired smile full of pain and promise. "Because you didn't deserve a cage. No one does." The engines roared to life. The ship lifted slowly, shaking off the hold of the alien dock, rising through the bay. Flying out into the stars like a bird freed from iron claws, she leaned her head against the wall, eyes closed again, her heartbeat calming. Her body warm for the first time in years, or maybe forever, the blanket still around her, the memory of cold fading into silence. Outside the window, the ship left the alien vessel behind, moving toward a place unknown, a future uncertain, but better than the past. Better than the cage. Jack sat beside her, one hand on his weapon, the other resting near her hand, not touching but close, like a promise that he wasn't going anywhere. She looked at him again. One word in her throat, one question in her eyes, but it didn't come out, only her hand moved, slowly reaching toward his. Her fingers brushed his skin, and in that simple touch, something passed between them, not words, not memories, but something stronger, something human. Silence surrounded the ship now, no more alarms, no more gunshots, just the quiet hum of the engine and the soft rhythm of space passing by outside. Jack sat in the pilot seat, his hand steady but his heart heavy. His eyes glanced toward the girl again and again. Still not sure who or what she truly was, she sat curled under the blanket, her small body resting but her mind wide awake, her thoughts like broken glass, sharp and scattered. She had no name, no past, no story, only flashes in her head like small firelights in the dark. Metal tables, cold hands, screaming voices, and a shadowy figure watching her from above, with eyes that never blinked. Jack finally spoke, voice soft but serious. "We're safe for now. I need to know what they did to you, anything you remember. Anything at all." She looked at him, her eyes no longer empty, but not yet full either, like a mirror reflecting something just out of view. She hesitated, then slowly placed her hand over her chest again, the place where the pain always lived like a quiet storm, and closed her eyes. Flashes returned faster now, a white room, metal walls, bright lights blinding her eyes, needles in her arms, wires on her head, alien faces with masks, strange voices repeating numbers and codes. One word louder than all others, Subject 07, her eyes opened slowly, lips trembling slightly as she spoke in a whisper barely heard. "I was not born." Jack froze for a second, trying to understand her words, confusion filling his mind like smoke. "What do you mean, not born? Everyone is born." She shook her head gently, her voice gaining a little strength, like a candle flickering to life. "Made in lab, not baby, not mother, just test and pain." Jack leaned forward, shock on his face, his breath caught in his throat. He knew about genetic labs, illegal cloning, secret weapon projects buried in black files, but he never thought he would find one in the shape of a child. He whispered to himself, "Project Child, modified human, living experiment." She looked at him with calm eyes now, not angry, not afraid, just waiting, as if she had accepted the truth long ago. And now it was his turn to carry the weight. "Subject 07, she said softly. "That is what they called me. Not girl, not name, just number." Jack clenched his fists, fury rising inside him like a firestorm. He had seen war and death and cruelty, but this was something else. This was erasing a soul before it even had a chance to grow. He stood up and walked to the back of the ship, opening a storage panel and pulling out an old data tablet. He connected it to the ship's system, scanned through signals intercepted from the alien base. Encrypted files popped up one by one. He broke through the code with shaky fingers, and then stopped when he saw the file name, Project Hope. He tapped it open. The screen flickered and showed images of children in glass chambers, wires running through their skin, charts with power levels and emotional control levels. A cold alien voice recording played back the log. Subject 07 shows enhanced brain activity, immune to standard pain response, physical growth rate above normal. Emotional connection remains unstable, possible risk of human-like behavior developing. Scheduled for reset. Jack's breath turned cold. Reset meant memory wipe or worse. They didn't want her to feel, to connect, to become more than what they built. He turned back to her, voice tight and controlled. You were made to be a weapon. But they were afraid because you started feeling things, because you cried, because you cared. She looked down again, her fingers curling around the edge of the blanket, her voice thin like paper. I wanted to be girl, not machine, but they hurt me when I cried. They said no tears allowed. Jack walked back to her, knelt beside her seat, and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. She didn't pull away this time, just looked up at him slowly. You're not a number. Not a test, not a thing, he said with steady eyes. You're someone, you're alive. And I see you. Her eyes filled again, not from pain this time, but from something new, something warm and strange. Something like hope blooming for the first time in ashes. Jack stood and looked at the stars outside. Deep black with endless light, scattered across like dreams waiting to be found. Then back at her. Do you want to keep running? Or do you want to find out who you really are? She nodded slowly, her voice soft but clear. I want name, I want truth. I want to know me. The screen behind Jack suddenly lit up with red text. A warning message from an old satellite system. A signal picked up from deep space, repeating one phrase over and over. Subject, 07 located. Bounty activated. He turned to the girl. His eyes sharper now. They're still looking for you. And they're sending hunters. She looked at the message, then back at him, her voice calm and strong for the first time. Then I must not be weak anymore. Cold silence returned for. Only a few breaths before danger filled the air again. The ship floated through space like a shadow in the dark. But its presence was already known beyond the black stars. Beyond the forgotten systems, signals were flying, silent hunters were already moving inside the ship. Jack stood near the screen, eyes locked on the red signal, pulsing like a heartbeat, repeating the words again and again. Subject 07 located, bounty active, high value capture, alive only, reward doubled if returned before emotional corruption. He turned slowly toward the girl who now stood on her own, no longer curled, no longer silent, her hands at her sides. Her eyes open and aware, her presence steady like calm before a storm. She looked at the message and then looked at Jack. Her voice quiet but without fear. They are coming. Jack nodded once, his hand moving to his weapon, checking it like habit, his other hand adjusting ship controls, trying to break their tracking. Line changing course again and again, but the signal kept finding them, jumping from system to system, like it had her scent written in code. The girl moved closer, her feet light, her breath slow. She looked at the stars outside, her voice like memory touched by fire. They never stop, they never let go. They don't care what I am or what I feel, only what I can become, a tool, a weapon, a prize. Jack turned and stepped closer, his voice lower now, his words meant only for her. You are not a prize, not anymore. You have a choice now, and we fight for that choice together. The screen flickered again, a new signal joined the hunt, not a message, but a ship code encrypted from an old war. Drone pattern, alien tech mixed with something human-made, a hybrid hunter designed for speed, silence, and death. Jack cursed under his breath, his fingers flying across the screen, maps opening, coordinates, calculating a place to hide, a place to stand. There's a moon nearby, dead surface caves under the rock. If we land fast, we can lose them long enough to figure out next steps. The girl said nothing, just nodded once and moved to the side seat, strapping in like she knew what came next. Her hands gripping the armrests, her eyes still glowing faint with something waking, something hidden. The ship tilted, then roared into motion, engines burning bright as it cut through the stars, the moon appearing in the distance, cold, gray, silent like a grave. But they had no time for fear, no time for thinking, only movement, only escape. Behind them, space cracked open. Like glass, a hunter ship appeared, sleek and dark, with no sound, no signal, just speed. Its body shaped like a blade, its eyes red and watching. The hunt had begun. Jack pushed the ship harder, the controls shaking, the alarms screaming, the distance closing fast. Each second burned like fire in his veins. The moon was close, but not enough. Hunter fired once, a silent beam slicing through the edge of Jack's ship, tearing through metal like paper. Warning, not kill yet, capture first, always capture first. Girl felt the blast, her body shaking in the seat, her mind flashing again, broken tables, screaming lights. Needles deep, her breath came fast, but she held on, her fingers tightening, her mind whispering one word again and again. No, no, Jack's voice cut through the panic. Hold on, we're going in fast. The ship broke into the moon's thin atmosphere, dust and ash, kicking up into clouds. Vision fading, engines screaming as Jack spun the ship down into a narrow canyon, metal grinding stone. The hunter behind, not slowing, not stopping. Ship slammed into the ground, sliding through the dust, smashing against rocks until it finally stopped, silent, broken. But not dead. Smoke rose from the side panel, sparks danced in the dark. Jack coughed hard, pulling himself up, eyes scanning for the girl. She was there, still in her seat, still breathing, but shaking, her hands trembling, her eyes wide. She looked at him, no words, just breath, then slowly stood on weak legs. Jack opened the side hatch. Dust poured in, moonlight touched their faces. They stepped out together. The cave entrance just ahead, dark and open like a mouth waiting to hide them. They ran or limped or crawled through the stone path, deeper inside, shadows swallowing them whole behind them. The hunter ship landed with grace and silence, metal feet touching ash without sound, scanners activating, weapons charging. Its hunt was not over inside the cave. Jack turned and aimed his weapon toward the opening, his eyes sharp, his hands steady. The girl stood beside him, eyes glowing, faint again, but this time not from fear, not from pain, but from something stronger rising inside. They think I'm still weak. Jack looked at her, surprised, not at the words, but the strength behind them. Her voice steady, her body still, her fear now burned into purpose. She stepped forward, hands raised slightly toward the entrance, light flickering between her fingers, small and strange, then brighter like stars in her blood, waking from deep sleep. Hunter entered the cave, red eyes locking on its target. But before it could fire, before it could move, the girl whispered one word into the air: enough. The light exploded from her palms, not fire, not energy, something else, something deeper, waves of pressure, sound, light, memory crashing into the hunter's systems. The machine staggered, metal arms glitching, sensors burning, the cave wall shaking. From the force, Jack shielded his face, watching her power dance like lightning around her small form. Her hair rising in the wind, her feet planted like roots. She was not a girl, not a child, not a cage anymore. She was becoming. The hunter dropped too. One knee, sparks flying, systems failing, its body twitching as it tried to reset, but she stepped closer, calm, strong, and unafraid. She reached out her hand and touched the machine's head gently, like closing the eyes of an old enemy, and whispered, "Again, I'm not yours." Dust floated in the cold cave air, silent and slow like forgotten memories drifting through time. Jack sat near the edge, watching the burned-out hunter machine, its body still twitching, its red eyes dim, now lifeless like a broken ghost. Her touch had stopped it, not with violence, but with something deeper, something older. She stood nearby, her face calm, her hands no longer glowing, but still warm with the echo of power, her breath soft like the wind outside her heart, louder than the silence inside her chest, beating not just from fear, but from something new, from choice, from control. Jack walked to her slowly, each step careful, each word measured in his throat. He had seen many things, soldiers turned to ash, planets broken by greed, but this girl, this child, this weapon wrapped in skin and silence, she was different, not made for war, yet born from it. "We need to move," he said, his eyes not leaving hers, his voice low and grounded. "We need answers, we need truth." She nodded once without words, her mind already reaching beyond the cave, beyond the stars, beyond the fear. Her feet followed Jack's as they left the cave and walked across the dead moon, the sky above them filled with a billion stars watching. Like quiet gods, they found an old facility built into the cliffs, its doors sealed shut. But not for long. Her hand touched the metal, and it melted open, not with heat, not with fire, but with memory. The walls recognized her like a child returning home. After years of exile inside, the air was colder, the halls darker. The lights flickered as they stepped deeper, old systems humming awake like they had waited just for her. The walls held whispers. The machines held secrets, and the truth waited behind. Every locked door Jack led her through the corridor's weapons, ready but unused, his mind racing with possibilities. Why build this? Why bury it here? Why create a child with power meant for gods and give her a soul meant for sorrow they reach to control? Room, its walls covered in screens, most dead, some flickering with old data. Jack pulled a tablet from his pack, synced it with the console, and started breaking through the file's layers of security. Fell like weak walls when touched by his code. His fingers danced, his breath steady. She stood still in the center of the room, her eyes scanning the walls, her skin feeling the echoes of the past voices whispering her number again and again. Subject 07. Subject 07. Subject 07, like a chant, like a curse, like a name given without meaning. The screens lit up with images, old recordings. Sterile labs, children floating in tanks, machines surrounding them, scientists with masks, logging notes like farmers counting seeds. No kindness, no love, just tests, just numbers. Jack's eyes hardened, his voice flat as he read the files. Project Hope, designed to create emotion-proof superweapons built for high-risk environments, targets selected from modified DNA pools. Subject 07 showed high compatibility with psychic wave energy but unstable attachment to human emotions. Termination was scheduled on Phase 4. She stepped closer, reading the words that described her life like she was a machine, not a girl. Her voice came slow, heavy with hurt. They wanted to erase me. They called my feelings a threat. They called my kindness a bug. They wanted to make me empty. Jack looked at her, then looked at the screen again, something new blinking. A file locked under a different tag. Hope, directive unknown. Key required. The system asked for voice match. Only she stepped forward, her lips parting just enough to say one word. Hope. The file unlocked, the screen changed, showing a different room, a different time, a different man standing beside a smaller version of her, his hand on her shoulder, his face half hidden but human, his voice clear. If you're seeing this, then you survived, and that means they failed. My name is Dr. Elian Voss, and I made you not for war, not for death, but for something greater. You were not built to destroy. You were built to feel, to connect, to remind us of what we lost. Jack stared at the recording, his hands still, his mind frozen. The man continued his message, eyes filled with regret. They changed the project, turned it dark, but I hid this message. I hid your real name, your real path inside your mind. The moment you remember it all, the power will return, not to kill, not to conquer, but to heal the damage they caused. The recording ended. Silence fell again. But it was not empty silence. It was full of weight, full of fire, full of purpose. Jack turned to her slowly, his voice different now. He didn't build a weapon. He built a reminder. He built you to save something, not destroy it. She closed her eyes, and images burst behind them. Lights, colors, voices, a hand reaching to her, a lullaby sung in the dark, a name whispered like a secret, a name, not a number. Eyes opened, glowing brighter than before. Her breath deepened, her voice stronger now. My name is not Subject 07. My name is not weapon. My name is hope. The room trembled, not from danger, but from release, from truth finally spoken, from lies finally broken. Jack reached out, placed a hand on her shoulder, not as a soldier, not as a savior, but as someone who believed. Then the warning lights flashed again. A signal from orbit, not one ship but 3 coming, fast coming, armed bounty hunters, silent and cold. No questions, only orders, only capture. Jack looked at Hope, her face still calmer, hands glowing again, but not from rage, from purpose. He spoke without fear. It's time to fight, not just for you, but for every child they locked away, every name they erased, every hope they tried to kill. And she whispered back, then let them come. The sky above the moon cracked with fire as the hunter ships descended, engines burning trails through the black, their metal bodies shaped like daggers, their weapons humming with silence and death. No warning, no questions, no delay, only one mission: return Subject 07, alive or not, inside the forgotten lab. Hope stood at the center of the control room, her feet planted on the cold floor, her hands no longer shaking, her heart steady, her eyes bright, not with fear, but with something harder, something unbreakable. Jack watched her closely, his breath slow. His weapon ready, but his trust resting fully in her, not in bullets. Not in plans, but in her choice. "They are here," she said softly, her voice without fear, without hate, just truth. Falling into the air like snowflakes made of steel, Jack nodded once, not as a soldier, not as a protector, but as someone who had made peace with the fire about to fall. Walls shook as the ships landed outside, the dust rising, the moon crying quietly. Beneath the weight of violence, the facility groaned as footsteps echoed through the halls, boots of bounty hunters, cold and quiet, the kind who followed orders without blinking, the kind who didn't see a child when they aimed their guns, only a reward, only a target. Hope turned to Jack, her fingers curling slightly at her sides, her voice calm but heavy. "If I give myself to them, they will stop hunting you. They will take me and leave." Jack stepped forward, his voice louder, now not with anger, but with something deeper, with disbelief. "If you go with them, they will tear you apart again. They won't stop, they'll erase you. They'll destroy everything that makes you real." Hope looked down for a moment, her breath soft, her eyes blinking once, then she looked up again, and there was no weakness in her gaze, only weight, only quiet resolve. "I was created to survive, I was built to endure, but now I must choose what I endure, for I must choose who I become." Jack opened his mouth to argue, but she raised her hand gently, not to silence him, not to command him, but to ask for his trust without words. Doors trembled now under the weight of metal fists. The hunters had arrived, their scanners locking onto her position. Their weapons charged, their voices like machines echoing through the halls. "Subject 07, surrender. Now no resistance will be tolerated. Your return has been authorized. Your function will be corrected." Hope stepped forward, the air around her shifting, the ground beneath her feet humming with quiet light, her skin glowing faint, her heartbeat louder than the machines. Her thoughts no longer trapped in fear, no longer spinning in cages. Jack raised his weapon, his stance wide, but Hope looked at him. And he understood without her speaking. He lowered his weapon, he stepped back, he let her lead. She walked toward the entrance, each step slow and steady, her hands raised not in surrender, but in peace, her voice loud, now echoing through the broken walls. "My name is Hope. I am not a subject. I am not a function. I am not yours." The doors burst open, metal and sparks flying. Hunters rushed in, their armor cold, their helmets faceless, their guns aimed, their fingers ready. But the moment they saw her, they paused. Something in the air held them, something in her presence bent their wills. The lead hunter stepped forward, voice colder than space itself. "You were designed to obey. You were programmed to serve. You were never meant to choose." Hope looked at him, not with rage, not with fear, but with silence that spoke louder than screams. Her voice returned softer but unshaken. "Then I choose now. I choose to be more. I choose to be human." The hunter raised his weapon, one blink from death away, but she moved faster, not her body but her mind, her light, her truth. It exploded like soundless thunder. It filled the room like wind and waves in memory. It touched every machine, every wire, every code she had ever been forced to carry, and it erased the chains. The hunters staggered, their weapons falling, their knees hitting the ground one by one, as her presence filled the space, not with violence, but with power, not with fire, but with light. Jack shielded his eyes, not because he was afraid, but because he knew this was not his moment. This was hers, her becoming, her defiance. Her choice turned into a storm of stillness. When the light faded, the room was quiet. The hunters lay unconscious, their systems overloaded, not by force, but by something they were never meant to face. A soul with power, a heart with control. Hope stood at the center, breathing slowly, her body tired but whole, her eyes glowing like stars born in silence. Jack stepped beside her quietly, his voice lower than before. "You didn't destroy them. You stopped them without killing them. You didn't become the weapon they built you to be." Hope looked at him, her voice soft. "Because I remember what you said. I remember what it means to choose." He smiled then, not wide, not loud, just enough. Just real. Far above the moon, the sky cleared. The signal stopped. The chase ended, not with blood, not with death, but with a single decision. Hope had not run. She had not broken. She had not become their creation. She had chosen her own path, the stars Above, the moon blinked slow and silent, like they were watching not as witnesses, but as guardians ancient and distant. The battle was over, but the air still carried the weight of what had almost happened. Machines, now quiet bounty hunters, still breathing but motionless, their systems drained by something stronger than energy, something older than programming. Hope stood in the center, her arms at her sides, her eyes dimming. Slowly, the light within her pulling back like a tide returning to sea. Her legs shook slightly, not from fear, but from everything she had released, from the storm she had become, and the silence she had left behind. Jack stepped forward carefully, not rushing, not shouting, only moving with quiet purpose, like someone stepping into a sacred place, his voice gentle, his hand reaching. You stopped them, you didn't run, you didn't break, you chose, and you won. She looked up at him, her eyes tired but alive, her breath shaky but full. She didn't speak, not yet. Her body was still catching up to her soul, but her face said what words could not. Her choice had not been made for victory, it had been made for truth. They walked together through the ruined hall, her footsteps slow but steady, her fingers brushing the walls like she was feeling the last pieces of her story. The lab that built her now felt smaller, weaker, no longer a prison, just a place made of memory. They reached the surface again, the sky above wide and open, stars stretching forever across the void. The hunter ship still there, silent and dark, no longer a threat now, just tools waiting for commands that would never come. Again Jack looked at them, then at her, his voice low but steady. You rewrote everything, you broke what they made and turned it into something real. She tilted her head, her voice soft and distant. I didn't know I could. I didn't know I was allowed. Jack crouched in front of her, his eyes clear and honest. They tried to erase that part of you, the part that dreams, the part that questions, the part that says no, but they failed, and now you get to decide who you are, not them, not me, not the stars, only you. She sat down on the cold rock, pulling her knees to her chest, the blanket still wrapped around her like a promise. She looked out at the sky, her voice barely a whisper. Then I want to be something that never hurts someone. I want to protect, not destroy. I want to be more than what they made. I want to be someone who remembers what pain feels like, so I never give it to anyone else. Jack sat beside her, his arm resting near hers, not touching, just close like a wall that never pressed down, only held space. You already are that someone, Hope, and you gave yourself the name before I ever could. She looked at him, confusion passing across her face like a shadow through light. But I don't know what name to keep. I only called myself Hope because it felt right in that moment, but I don't know if it's really me. Jack smiled. Slow and true, his voice deep like the roots of trees. Names don't make you real, choices do, but hope is not just a word, it's a story, and you're writing it one breath at a time. She breathed in slowly, then exhaled, and the stars felt closer, like they were listening, like they were waiting for her answer. A small breeze passed over them, even though the moon had no wind. It felt warm and gentle, like something beyond physics had bent just for her, just for now. She stood again and looked down at her bare feet, touching the dust of a world that once held her in chains, now holding her in choice. She raised her hand and looked at her fingers, no longer shaking, no longer tools, now simply part of her. I want to help others like me. If they still exist, I want to find them. I want to tell them it's okay to feel, to cry, to choose. Jack stood beside her, his voice quiet and full. Then we'll find them together. You're not alone anymore, not ever again. The ship behind them, still damaged but alive, blinked with soft lights, like it too was ready to move forward, like it too had chosen to survive. They walked back slowly, steps in rhythm, not as a soldier and a weapon, but as two survivors, two humans shaped by different paths but walking the same one. Now inside the ship, she touched the control panel, her fingers gentle. The system responded with light and sound, no longer resisting her presence, now welcoming it. The ship lifted from the surface, slow and strong, leaving behind the lab the broken hunters, the echoes of a past that would never hold her again. The stars opened ahead like pages in a book waiting to be read, waiting for her story. Jack looked at her one last time before the stars pulled them forward, his voice calm. So what now? She looked ahead, her eyes bright with the fire of everything she had learned, everything she had chosen, everything she still had to become. Now we go find the others. Now we make sure no child ever wakes up in a cage. Again, now we remind the galaxy what it means to be human. And in the silence that followed, the ship disappeared into the black sky, not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as something rare and sacred, something stronger than any machine, something built in wires but guided by heart. Hope was no longer hidden. Hope was no longer locked. Hope was human.